Hello and welcome to the Parsha class, Parsha Shemini 5786. There's not a lot of time to give a class, but it's a very important Parsha in terms of kashrut. Many of the laws of kashrut are here, and there's even some we're not going to have a chance to talk about in the class, but we'll get started as soon as possible with the Taam Dagan, and we'll definitely discuss, God willing, lessons regarding the dangers of drinking alcohol, the importance of eating only kosher foods, avoiding disgusting things, the reason to know the laws of kosher, and more. So we begin Parshat Shemini, chapter 10, verse 2, that Hashem, that Hashem sent out a fire that killed Nadav and Avihu, two of the sons of Aaron. There's an opinion that Nadav and Avihu died because they performed the service while drunk, which makes sense because the first law that the Kohanim received after this is the law forbidding them from drinking before the service. The evils of drunkenness cannot be overemphasized, besides the fact that it lessens our ability to think and reason, as we'll hear very soon. It is also difficult on the liver and can be addictive. So, three strikes against alcohol right there. Chapter 10, verse 9. Yain v'shecha lo teisht atav vanecha itach. This is where they are told not to, the Kohanim are not allowed to drink wine or any strong drink. When they go to serve in the Ohel Moed, v'lo tamutu, otherwise they could die. Chukat olam adoratechem. This is a law forever, for all your generations. A Kohen is forbidden from serving while intoxicated with wine, or to a lesser degree, any intoxicating drink. Says the Rambam in Hilchot Biat Hamikdash, the second halacha there. Kohanim should not drink before their service because, quote, this is from Rav Hirsch, what is required for the practice of God's commandments is not hazy and excited emotion and imagination, but a clear mind and a sharp and sober intellect. The symbols of the sanctuary speak not to the imagination, but the clear and lucid mind. For only the mind, which comprehends clearly, reaches accurate conclusions, and places every detail in its proper category, is capable of guiding us to carry out God's commandments. Well, you need your mind. You need to think. You're killing your brain cells. You're not able to think. So that could be a problem. Chapter 10, verse 11. And you shall teach the children of Israel all the chukim which Hashem spoke to them through Moshe. Being intoxicated, so besides not being allowed to drink during the service of Kohanim, people are also not allowed to drink when they're deciding Torah. We're learning or deciding Torah. It's but being intoxicating during learning or deciding Torah is not as severely punished as a Kohen who serves in the Beit HaMikdash while drunk, says Rashi. But intoxication during learning and making a legal decision are problematic because strong drink can remove the heart and mind, says Forno, of the person drinking, impairing both emotions and thoughts. And both are necessary for halachic decisions. Now, halacha is not just logic. There's an emotional aspect to halacha that poskim know, and a posik's mind and heart need to be in it. And if you're dull to everything, you don't care about things the way alcohol makes people do, or I was going to say the way alcohol makes people think, or in this case, not think, not care. So that's detrimental for a posek who's trying to get to the actual halacha of something. Chapter 10, verse 12, next verse. V'yidaber Moshe el Aaron ve'el Elazar ve'el Itamar benav hanotarim. So Moshe spoke to Aaron and his remaining sons, Eliezer and Itamar. K'chu ed hamincha v'noteret maas me'ishe Hashem. Take the meal offering and the whatever remains of the fire of Hashem. V'yichlucha matzot eitzel hamizbech. And you should eat the matzot next to the mizbeach. Ki kodesh kodashim hi. It is the holy of holies. So someone so they're in a ninus. They're mourning. Their brother died, or his son. In Aaron's case, his sons died. So they're in a very strict level of mourning, and therefore they should not eat the hekdesh, which is the holy stuff. So, but bread should be the staple food, not meat. This is one of the lessons we learned from here. And it's interesting, there's an amusing anecdote in that spirit about someone who asked Rav Chaim Kanievsky for his halachic ruling regarding the proper bracha to say before eating schnitzel. He said he did not know what that is. So the Rebbitzin overheard and said, "You eat that for lunch." And he then answered the questioner with, "What do you mean, what bracha? You wash for bread and say hamotzi with this ingredient in the sandwich. Who would eat it by itself? Who eats schnitzel without bread?" So I guess Rav Chaim was not phobic or whatever it's called, or fleshophobic for that matter. Since bread is the staff of life, it is forbidden to eat kosher bread at the same table on which lies non-kosher bread. That's not true for other kosher and non-kosher foods. You could, in theory, I mean, with some guarding and some care, you could eat food together with a non-Jew who's eating non-kosher food. A bread, it might be a different level according to the Shach. All right, chapter 10, verse 17. Madua. Why didn't you eat? Moshe is upset with Aaron's sons, and with Aaron for that matter. Why didn't you eat the sin offering in the B'makom HaKodesh, in the holy place? Ki Kodesh Kodashim, it's holy of holies. V'otah natan lachem l'seit et avon ha'ida l'chaper aleihem lifnei Hashem. So they need to eat the sin offering in order to expiate, to forgive the people who brought the atonement, which is the Jewish people in this case. So through the Kohen's act of eating the sin offering, the one who offered against atonement, again, eating is a holy thing for us. It's not just a simple, exercise in normal human or even animal behavior. This eating can be a sanctified thing, as we see from the Kohanim here. Dabru el b'nei Israel, more in this the next chapter. We're going to get into the laws of kashrut. So speak to the Jewish people, Lemor, saying, Zot hachaya asher tochlu. This is the chaya, which usually means living thing, or chai, from the word chai. Mikol habehema asher al ha'aretz, from all the animals that are on the earth. Now, so these words, by the way, chaya and behema, they have very specific definitions as well. The flocks or the wild animals, domesticated, non-domesticated. There are different ways to say it. In our context here, we'll see that they're rather mixed up. So kosher is a special diet for Jewish people because they perform mitzvot and are thus fit to be called chayim, living. This is analogous to a patient who is likely to recover, who requires a limited diet, as opposed to a patient who is unlikely to live, who can eat whatever, since it will make no difference. Hashem showed Moshe an image of the kosher animals. There's a need to show a physical representation of a kosher creature so the general public will know what to look for. Maharal argues with the Rambam about the reason for kashrut. The Rambam says it has to do with health reasons. The fact is that the laws of kosher are chukim, laws without a clear rationale, as is indicated by the Torah's application of the term tahor and tameh, themselves chukim, to kosher and non-kosher food, pure and impure. These are words that are an invention of Hashem. They're not necessarily physical manifestations of anything. The two sides of a kosher animal are both external and internal, indicative of an ability to access physical and spiritual health. We too gain this access by consuming these kinds of animals, says the Sfat Emet. Behema, and here's what I was saying before about the definitions of these words. Behema can be included in the category of chaya for this purpose. Chaya means that they are alive and they feel, so we may not cause them pain for no reason. Can't just hit an animal, kill an animal for nothing. There needs to be a reason. It also means that these animals are alive and able to live, so that we may not eat injured treifot. I'll get more into treifot later in the class today, God willing. There's an opinion. Mishnah Torah, Rambam. That eating human flesh is not a transgression of eating what is impure, but rather a negation of the positive commandment in this verse to abstain from any meats besides those listed in these verses. Next verse, chapter 11, verse 3. Ki mafreset parsa, kol mafreset parsa, mishosad shesa paraso. It's hard to read. I should probably make this a little bigger. Maybe that'll help. Good thinking sometimes. Malad whichever has split hoofs and is completely cloven-footed and chews its cud among the animals, that's what you may eat. There are two signs of kosher animals: split hooves and chewing their cud. Probably put this there. Sec. All right, and all right. There are two. Any animal who without both signs may not be eaten. Rashbam's three characteristics of a kosher animal can still fit with our sage's idea of two characteristics of a permitted animal, because both of the items related to the hoof can be called one. That's the Oznaim LaTorah's very detailed commentary there. Eating something that is not kosher violates both a positive and negative commandment. An animal with split hooves does not naturally travel far, and an animal that chews its cud regurgitates the same food several times to get all its nourishment. Kosher animals thereby demonstrate satisfaction with what they have, a characteristic we could attain that will help us avoid most misdeeds, says the Vilna Gaon. Now, keep in mind also the Vilna Gaon teaches that that jealousy is really the source of all of the main averot. Most of the sins that we commit is a sense of not being satisfied with what we have. So therefore, if we learn this from these animals, these animals that don't travel far because they have split hooves, and they don't look for all kinds of different foods to eat because they regurgitate the same food into multiple stomachs. They chew their cud. Therefore, that's a characteristic we're trying to get by eating kosher animals. An animal with split hooves does not naturally travel far. Oh, we said this already. Oh, that's weird. How'd that happen? All right. All right. The fetus of a kosher animal inside its properly slaughtered mother is also kosher. Okay. So maybe I spell it right this time. Okay. Chapter 11, verse 8. Mibsaram lo tochelu u'neveltam lo tigau tmeim heim lachem. Their meat do not eat, do not touch the carcasses. They are tameh, they are unclean to you. Since the animals named in this list by the Torah as not kosher have some of the signs of kosher animals, a pig has split hooves, for instance, right, and are nevertheless not kosher, animals with no signs at all of being kosher need not be mentioned at all. The prohibition against eating the bones and sinews of a non-kosher animal is more lenient than the prohibition against eating the actual meat of these animals. All right. So that's why, under certain circumstances, gelatin, etc., there are situations where, at least in theory, some of these things could be made kosher, but the animal itself that it's made from cannot. All right. Next, chapter 11, verse 9. These are the ones you can eat. The creatures. Mikol asher b'mayim, of the ones that are in the water. Kol asher lo snapir v'kaskeset. Anything that has fins and scales. Ba'amim v'nechalim otam tochelu. In the seas and in the rivers, these are the ones you can eat. So in other words, fish, aquatic creatures, are only kosher if they are if they have fins and scales. The scales of a kosher fish must be removable. Not that you have to remove them, but have to be removable. These scales allow the fish to live in cleaner waters, allowing them to expel those things that are physically and spiritually harmful for people to eat, says the Ramban. Chapter 11, verse 11. V'sheketz hayu lachem b'bsaram lo tochelu vet nivlatam tishaktzu. And they shall be disgusting to you. You may not eat any of their meat. You should be disgusted by their carcasses. Even a mixture of creeping things into an otherwise kosher food is forbidden if the flavor of the creeping thing is noticeable. Creatures that swarm and breed in non-moving waters can be eaten as long as they're still in that original water. That's Rashi. I wouldn't recommend that right at the moment. There's no prohibition against eating the fins or bones of a non-kosher fish. So in theory, this is why fish gelatin is much easier to source for kosher food than the bone gelatin from animals. Chapter 11, verse 12. Kol asher yesh, kol asher ein lo tzanapir kaskeset, any b'mayim, any creature, any aquatic creature that does not have fins and scale, sheketzu lachem, should be a disgusting thing for you. Commentary says, Taam Dagan here, any fish with fins and scales is kosher, even if it sheds the scales. All fish with scales have fins, so it can be assumed to be kosher once one sees that just the scales, and even just one of them, as long as the item has the other appearance of a fish. The sages apply the verse Yagdil Torah v'yadir, he'll elevate Torah and make it precious, in reference to Hashem and His Torah mentioning the seemingly superfluous fins, which means the Torah provides knowledge of the world. There's a reason to learn Torah. Torah is a great thing to learn. So to have more Torah to learn, Hashem put in this word for us to. He could have just said any animal with scales is kosher, but to say fins and scales begins the whole conversation about what about fins, what the fins mean, what if the fins fall off, what if the scales fall off, what if the fins remain, all these other situations. Chapter 11, verse 13. And these are the animals that are disgusting from the fowl, from the birds. Lo yuchlu shekesem, do not eat them, they are disgusting. And hanesher, v'et paras, v'et azniya. The nesher, the paras, and the azniya. Although we are allowed to benefit from birds that are not kosher, we should not feed them to children. Furthermore, eating birds of prey instills aggression in our personalities, as can be seen from the fact that one sign of a bird not being kosher is clawing, which is a violent, cruel behavior. Besides being influenced by the negative character traits of the animals we eat, we are even affected by the body parts of these creatures, says the Zohar. Birds of different subspecies are still related, even if they have different names or look different. Okay, next, chapter 11, verse 19. Other animals, other birds that are not kosher, and chasida, ve'anafa, lemina, ve'et haduchifat, ve'et ha'atalet. So the stork, the heron, and after its kind, the hoopie, the hoopoe, the bat. I'm not sure if these are all accurate translations of these, but the chasida, which is usually translated as stork, has this beautiful name, chasid, right? Chasida. It is a giver. So Rashi tells us that the Chisidah has this name because it shares food with its own species. It is nevertheless not kosher though. What? It shares. Should be perfect. Should be kosher, right? Wrong. It's not kosher. Why not? Because true kindness requires one to share even with those who are different. It shares only with its own kind. Storks give to other storks. Storks don't give to seagulls. They definitely don't give to people unless they're delivering a baby. Yeah. All right. Chapter 11, verse 21. Af al zeh tochlu mikol sheretz ha'of hacholech al arba. Of all the winged swarming things that you can eat the ones that walk on four legs. Asher lo, or lo, karaim mim'al l'raglav, v'nater bahen et haaretz. Which have joined legs above their heads, wherewith to leap, with which, should I say, with which to leap upon the earth. Okay. There are kosher species of grasshoppers, but most Jews are not expert in determining which they are. Rav Chaim Kanievsky, by the way, has a whole sefer on this. Because there's a different kri and ksiv for the word lo, either means not or lo meaning his. The sages in the Talmud learn that the kosher species of grasshoppers uh, has species has should we have jumping legs even later in their lives. This verse is a source for allowing honey to be eaten, according to the Gemara in Bechorah. It's a derivative of an insect. Are insects kosher? Not usually. No, except for this kosher species of grasshopper. V'chol sheretz ha'ov asher lo arba raglayim shekes hu lachem. But any winged swarming thing which has 4 feet, they're disgusting to you. Four-legged winged creatures are forbidden to be eaten, but five-legged creatures are not. Interesting. That's Rashi. Good luck finding a five-legged creature, though. Species, I should say. Okay, chapter 11, verse 34. 1 second. From all the food from which you can eat, asher yavo alav mayim, if it come that which is on water shall be yitma, would be impure. V'hol mashke asher yeshateh b'chol kli yitma, and all drink in every such vessel that may be drunk shall be unclean. So an egg is the standard measure for maximum volumes of food. Why is that? Because asher yachel, it is able to be consumed basically in one shot. It is the largest food that you can eat in one shot. You can put a whole egg in your mouth. Right? And animals' food and spoiled foods are not considered food for purpose of tuma and tahara. Only human food can attain that, and we'll see from Rav Hirsch a very interesting reason for that. And olive is the standard measurement for a minimum amount of food, ha'ochel, that is eaten, wherein a person is considered to have consumed it. The definition of consuming. Chapter 11, verse 41. V'chol hasheretz, hasheretz ala aretz, sheketz, hu lo ye'achel. Any swarming thing that swarms upon the earth is a disgusting thing and shall not be eaten. A person is as culpable for feeding someone non-kosher food as consuming it oneself. Yeah, that was Rashi. Okay. We're getting towards the end here. There's a lot to say in the last few verses, though. Chapter verse 43. Al tashaktu et nafshotechem b'chol hasheretz hashoretz lo titma'u bahem v'nitmatam bam. You shall not make yourself disgusting. You shall not make yourselves disgusting with any swarming thing that swarms, nor shall you make yourself unclean with them, that you should be defiled through it. We may not eat what people consider disgusting, bal tashaktu. It's a halacha. But this can sometimes be obviously subjective. When Hashem tells Yecheskel to eat barley cake baked with human waste, the prophet protests because he is disgusted. And because he is careful about what he eats, Hashem relents. Hashem would not have relented had it not been for the fact that this is that Yecheskel is careful about what he eats. The definition of disgusting could be individualized subjectively, as we said. The taste of a sheretz is not batal, not negated, even though it is pogem, ruinous to the taste of whatever it fell into, because it is a chidush. It's a new thing. But it's disgusting to eat a sheretz. It's never pogem. It's never. It's always ruined to begin with. Furthermore, eating while being in a disgusting state, like needing to relieve oneself, is cursed with the foul odor of perspiration. The sages apply the verse to prove disgusting things should not be sacrificed. But as it says down here in the note, the Maharam Shik and the Even Ezel disagree. They say you don't really need this. So this teaching, obviously, you're not going to bring disgusting things to the temple. There's a spiritual damage caused by the eating of non-kosher. So we talked about physical stuff. There's spiritual stuff. One should avoid eating them lest one becomes defiled through them. A story is told about two travelers, one who marries to eat kosher because he always tried to keep kosher, since Baal Taher Misayim Oto. So somebody who's trying to be pure is help. There's a similar idea with the treif wax that fell in the Vilna Gaon's soup when he decided stringently about a chicken, as opposed to a lenient view of the Rav of Vilna, allowing him to avoid eating what he considered forbidden. The story goes, short version, is that the husband and wife both needed to find out about the status of a chicken. They both went to different rabbis, not knowing that they had done that. And so one got an answer from the Rav of Vilna, one got an answer from the Vilna Gaon. When the Vilna Gaon found out that the Rav of Vilna argued against him, so he said, "You need to follow the opinion of the Rav of the town." When they were a little bit humming and hawing, I don't know, the Vilna Gaon's not going to wouldn't eat this. He said, "You know what? I'll be your guest. I'll eat at your house." So the story goes, as he was about to eat from this chicken that he thought was paskin was not kosher, but he wanted them to respect the town, the rabbi. So eat a drop of fat, non-kosher fat, from a candle above him, dropped into his soup, and he was no longer able to eat it. Okay, chapter 11, verse 44. Ki ani Hashem Elokechem, I am Hashem your God, says Hashem. V'hit kadishtem yitem kedoshim, be holy, and you shall remain holy. Ki kodosh ani, because I am holy. Lo tamu et nafshotechem, don't impurify yourselves. V'chol hasher aromes al haaretz. With any of these, don't make yourself impure with any of these swarming things that move around the earth. So remaining pure is one of the sources for the halacha that one must wash one's hands before eating bread. We talked about this before in the context of how we learned it from the Kohanim that they washed before the avoda. So we also wash, but part of that is because we are also supposed to be holy. Okay, last verse that we have that we'll have time for today. Also the last verse in the Parsha, so we got that going for us. Lahavdi, you're supposed to learn, you're supposed to know. It says the Torah, Lahavdi obein hatama obein hator. to be able to distinguish between the unclean and the clean. Ben hachaya hanechelet, from the animal that you can eat, ben hachaya asher lo te'echel, and the animal that you will not eat. Every Jew, says the Taam Dagan, is required to know, recognize, and become an expert in kashrut, to the point where one should also be able to distinguish between a properly and improperly slaughtered animal for purpose of transmitting impurity, and determine if an injury an animal sustained renders it a treifa and thus not kosher to eat. Everybody is required to know these things. There's that's like a minimum. Hashem begins and ends this verse with the letter Lamed, whose gematria is 30, two Lameds, so two 30s, so that's 60, to hint to the idea that bittul nullification requires a ratio of 1 to 60 of forbidden food in a permitted food. And if something forbidden falls into something that's permitted, and there's a ratio of at least 1 to 60, it would allow the final product to be eaten, along with the principle of im hakol, the gematria of the Hebrew phrase between the living and that may be eaten and the living thing that may not be eaten, is the gematria is the same as these are the 18 reasons for an animal to be considered a treifa, which the Talmud elaborates and enumerates, and the Gemara in Chulin. The performance, the observance. Sorry, give me 1 second. The observance of the dietary laws merely gives one the ability to attain holiness, but one cannot actually attain holiness unless one is conscious of this ability and recognizes the task for which this ability has been given to him. This is Rav Hirsch. He continues, food is not automatically susceptible to impurity. Rather, its fitness to receive impurity depends on an act of hechsher, preparation, and only this preparation gives it the character of material destined for human consumption. It has to be edible by people. We talked about how an animal's food is not considered in any way a problem of tuma. The act of preparation entails that food comes in contact with one of the 7 liquids mentioned. It's not mentioned. I didn't say this. So let's get rid of this if I can. And occurs with man's awareness. The meaning of the act of preparation is not easily explained. It is possible to interpret that only through the moistening of edible material is the material designated as food. Why is that? What does moisture have to do with the definition of food? For material dissolves only with the aid of liquid, and only thus does it become fit for human nourishment. Only when a solid has been reduced to liquid can it be introduced into the bloodstream as a nutrient to replenish the tissues that have been depleted by the body's metabolism. In this light, we can understand the meaning of preparation, provided that the wetting of the food requires intention or at least agreement. Right? So again, once you have a food prepared to become tame, that's when you have that's when it's considered real food, because that's what human beings need, is the moisture in food to get the nutrients from that into our system. Again, I want to thank everybody for joining, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. If you're only listening to this class after Pesach, I hope you had a wonderful Pesach, and I hope you have a beautiful Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for joining.